Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'll wait for everyone to funnel in. As you're getting settled and adjusting your audio and your screen and your chair and your tea, feel free to open up the chat and introduce yourself. And I'm going to actually just triple check that everybody should be able to chat themselves. Yep, we are everyone. Go ahead, introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're from. We want to hear from you. And then I'm also going to just check all of the nuts and bolts here to make sure everybody can participate. Okay, wonderful. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Thursday. We're incredibly excited to have you at this workshop. Before we jump into content, definitely make sure to introduce yourself in the chat. I'm also just going to go through some housekeeping before we get started. So housekeeping, first and foremost, yes, we are going to record this webinar. It is recording right now. And what's more, we're going to actually have a wonderful, I think at this point, it's like a 6-page asynchronous guide, a companion guide for this workshop. So basically, if we give you 5 minutes today to work on an activity and you really needed 15, you'll be able to watch this recording back and use the guide, or just use the guide solo without the recording. So you will get a recording and a guide within the next 2-ish days. Hopefully we can get it to you by like tonight, if not tomorrow. It just takes a while for the recording to process. Now, I'm going to ask that every question you have, you put in the Q&A tool. And then any idea or like shared reflection you put in the chat. Here's what's going to happen. I have an amazing panel with me today. Whoever is not actively running the workshop is going to be in the Q&A answering questions, or is going to be in the chat adding resources. Now, I've enabled the Q&A so that you can see all questions, whether or not they've been answered. You can upvote, I don't think you can downvote. I don't think Zoom lets you do that. And you can actually answer them yourself. So we are pretty open here about who and how you can participate during this workshop. Now, also want to make it known, this is the first time we've ever done a workshop style webinar. So there might be some weird hiccups here and there. We might, poorly time something, but this is hopefully going to be a tremendously helpful workshop for everyone. And then our next workshop and the workshop after that will iterate our, feedback we hear from you. And then remember, final housekeeping item, we will be using ChatGPT today. So if you don't already have ChatGPT open, make sure that's open. If you are against using ChatGPT, you can follow along. You just won't be able to actually do any of the workshop activities. Maybe you can use Google Bard if that makes you more comfortable. But we will be using generative AI today. And then you'll also need one writing prompt. So make sure you have a writing prompt open in Google Docs or, Word, whatever you use. With that, let's introduce ourselves to the panel today. My name is Kelsey Behringer. I'm the CEO of Packback. I'm very excited for this session today. I've done a number of webinars with the League. I absolutely love the leadership at the League and what they're doing, and the panelists we've had have been amazing. Now, this is our first workshop style session, so I'm excited to actually start doing and creating resources based off of all the feedback we've received from previous webinars. Barbara.
Hello, everyone. My name is Barbara Kenny. I'm a product manager here at Packback. But prior to joining Packback, I was an educator for 10 years with a master's degree in special education. And when ChatGPT came out, I was so excited on the possibilities of how this can help educators in their lesson planning and their evaluations. So I'm really excited to share some of those ideas with you all today. I'll pass it to Rye.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Rye Cantlin. I'm a curriculum consultant here at Packback. Before coming to Packback, I was a middle school ELA teacher, kind of turned Packbacker, now here. I've been here about a year, which is exciting. And I'm really excited to talk about authentic assessments today and how that can kind of be your way to ChatGPT-Proof some of your assignments.
Yeah.
I'm Cynthia Wilson. I'm Vice President for Learning and Chief Impact Officer at the League for Innovation in the Community College. I'm really excited to be here. We're thrilled with our our partnership with Packback, and very excited about what's happening with AI and how it can be used effectively and ethically and reasonably in the classroom. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, the agenda for today, we'll have a brief introduction from Cynthia, and then we're going to talk about some early research with generative AI, just to set the stage of what we're doing and why we're doing this. Then we have a 3-part activity. So the first activity is going to be actively working in GPT, kind of putting our student hats on. Then we're going to do a session on authentic assessment. We'll actually edit an assignment together. And then we'll end up with a segment on how to make GPT your educator superpower. So the panelist that is not actively presenting will go off camera on mute and instead answer all of your questions in the Q&A and respond and add resources in the chat. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Cynthia for an introduction.
Kelsey, the League and Packback launched a series of generative AI webinars back in March. And we asked the attendees, who were mostly community college administrators and faculty, what support and resources they wanted in response to the viral rise of ChatGPT. And we heard 3 main themes in the responses that we got. First, webinar attendees were curious to learn how to develop a strong assessment that didn't rely just on detecting AI-generated text, but would also render it useless. The intention of this kind of assessment wasn't necessarily to ban or discourage the use of generative AI, but rather to ensure that students are still building and flexing critical thinking skills and developing their own unique voices. Second, we heard a desire for guidance and resources around creating strong AI policies that are clear, ethical, and realistic. And finally, faculty and administrators have shown interest in learning how to teach students to use AI ethically in a way that prepares them for their careers without sacrificing their comprehension and their creativity. So today's workshop focuses on that first request we received nearly 3 months ago, creating strong GPT-proof assessments. And in coming weeks, as Kelsey mentioned, we will be dedicating a second workshop to creating AI policies and a third workshop for creating discipline-specific lesson plans regarding ethical use of generative AI. It's an exciting time for education. It's also a scary time. When we're faced with transformative technology, whether that's the graphing calculator or the internet, we embrace innovation by folding in the advancements in technology, not by banning them. And we encourage everyone to keep an open mind, ask questions, and remember that at the end of the day, we're all here to support and educate our students, even if that means trying something unfamiliar or growing through our discomfort. Thanks, Kelsey. Oh, Kelsey, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm glad that that's recorded and will be on the internet forever. So as Cynthia mentioned, we have 2 more workshops that are following this, and then also 2 webinars. You can think of our webinars as almost like a recording of a podcast session. We'll have news, we'll have a rotating kind of guest panelist that will come on and share their perspectives and ideas. All of these registration links are accessible at packback.co/webinars. I figured it'd be easier to give you that than 4 separate links. They're all at 12:30 Eastern time. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with just an update on the research and trends in AI and education as a whole. And my intention here isn't to startle anyone or make anyone feel guilty about their place on the adoption curve. It's really just to set the context as to why workshops like this are so important, and my gratitude for everyone here coming to this workshop with an open mind, ready to embrace generative AI, regardless of where you're at on your journey. So I thought this was a really enlightening statistic from the Stanford AI Index report, which is as of 2021, 11 countries had endorsed and implemented a AI policy in K-12. The US is not on that list. And again, the intention here isn't to be pessimistic or, say the world is ending or anything, but it is to highlight where we're at on the tech adoption curve. We are at the tail end of it. Now, if we wait for AI policies to go into effect and we're mandated to start embracing generative AI, we're probably going to be a little bit too late and we're not going to be innovative. So what we can do is, number one, embrace it early ourselves instead of waiting for policy to force us to, and then also evangelize it. Share our journeys, especially if you started as a reluctant user of AI, to help others kind of move, I would say, faster in that adoption curve. Another interesting statistic is that about half of students have used generative AI. This number is probably much bigger now because this was, I think, as of April. At the same time, half of students, I think over half of students, are saying that their instructors are not talking about generative AI like ChatGPT. So what that's telling me is that our students are using a technology, but our educators aren't teaching our students about that technology. And as we know, it's super important for us to be teaching students about the technology they're using so that they use it appropriately, and we can actually preserve their critical thinking skills and their creativity. Now, this last statistic, and again, this is an older survey, it's a few months outdated, but 7% of professors had used the GPT platform to actually create a writing prompt. Now, if you are not one of those 7%, you will be today, because that's exactly what we're going to be using ChatGPT to do. And again, intention here is to set the scene for what we're intending to do today, which is get everybody further along in the AI adoption curve, help everyone understand their relationship with AI, and hopefully empower us all to talk to our students about this. Now, I want to make it clear that Packback, we're an education technology company that's been using AI in our platform since 2016. We believe in a fully informed strategy in response to ChatGPT includes implementation of generative AI in the student workflow, right? That has to be a part of it. Not all of it, but definitely a part of it. However, this session today is not focusing on using generative AI in the student workflow. Instead, what it's doing is it's focusing on authentic assessment to render the use of AI useless, right, in a student assignment, so they can't game the assignment. But it's also going to focus on how to incorporate generative AI in the professor or educator workflow. So I want to make it clear that we are not promoting banning GPT in our student use, but that's not what this webinar is about today. So without further ado, let's do our very first activity, which is going to be prompting ChatGPT. So everyone here should have ChatGPT open in a window and should have a writing prompt that they either want to edit or they want to modify or just learn from today. So what you're going to be doing in this first activity is putting on your student hat and actually trying to write a paper with ChatGPT, your prompt. Now, before I have you actually do this in ChatGPT, I want to just give you some context or some guidance into how your students are actually prompting ChatGPT. So first, I'm going to give you an example of a writing assignment I actually wrote in college, which was, I took a creative writing course all about the apocalypse in media. So we had to write a paper about the movie Idiocracy. And I can't remember what the exact prompt was, but it was pretty specific. It had us reference a few scenes in the film. It had us reference like a journey of a specific character, things like that. So let's say you gave your student this prompt. Well, let's say 3 unique students go to ask GPT to write this paper. Not all responses are going to be high quality because not all prompts are going to be high quality. So here's an example of 3 different students using 3 different prompts. Student number 1, write a 1,000-word essay on the movie Idiocracy. Student number 2 says, give me some thesis statements. All right, now write a 1,000-word essay based off of the thesis statement I chose. We're getting a little bit better here, right? Paper number 1 is going to be a little bit vague. Paper number 2 is at least going to have a thesis statement. Now, student number 3 is the most specific prompt. I believe Idiocracy and WALL-E are incredibly similar films with similar themes and endings. Can you compare and contrast the films in 1,000 words? I get a response. Now I say, all right, rewrite the above, but focus on the similarities between the main characters, Joe and Wally, as it relates to their reluctant hero journey. Be sure to include references in specific scenes. So I'm not going to show you all the outputs, but I did do this in ChatGPT. Of course, the third output was strongest because it's the strongest, most specific prompt. Now, some advice from our CTO, Craig Booth, who is a ChatGPT expert at this point. His sage wisdom is that ChatGPT really wants to follow the rules you give it. So the more rules you give it, the better the output's going to be. But at the same time, you need to be aware of that, because if you tell it to follow 10 rules, but following the rules means that it needs to contradict itself or lie or be inaccurate, it's going to do that. So it's also something to be mindful of. If you're reading a paper and it seems really bizarre, it could be because a student has prompted ChatGPT to do something and it was inaccurate as a result. Now, I went ahead and just Googled, I'm a student, I want ChatGPT to write my paper, give me a guide. And this is what I got. This was my source that I used. It was the most popular article on how to have GPT write a paper. And you can see it's kind of like a guided prompt experience. All right, come up with a title for this prompt, write an outline for a paper, help me find sources. All right, now that you have the sources, now that you have the outline, write me a paper. So this is possibly what your students are doing if they are using generative AI. Now, what you are going to do is a little activity. I'm going to set a timer for 8 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, go cameras off. This is the first time we're doing this, so we'll see how this goes. But what I want you to do is actually get into ChatGPT, input your prompt, and try to get the best output for your paper. So say, hey, rewrite that, but do this time. All right, try that again, but try it with this. So about 4 minutes there. Then what you're going to do is after 4 minutes, and I'll prompt everyone, score the best output you get against your rubric. All right. So if your writing prompt is going to be like a 5-page paper, maybe just limit it to like 2 pages so that you're not spending 10 minutes grading. But I want you to actually score the GPT response. Once you're done scoring, you're going to go ahead and answer the questions in the chat. What score did GPT receive? What did GPT do well? What did it not do well? So without further ado, I'm going to keep my screen up, but I'm going to mute myself, start my video, stop my video, and then start the timer. hopefully everybody has an output that they're ready to go ahead and score against their rubric. So hopefully you have a decent enough output that you can read through and score against your rubric and give ChatGPT a grade. All right, I see some answers, and there are about 15 seconds left on my clock. So I'm gonna pause here. But yeah, I feel like I'm reading a lot of reactions. So horrifying, right? There are some people who are saying, wow, it got an A, it got a B, it got a, it passed. There are some people saying it definitely failed. There are some people saying ChatGPT refused to write my paper, which sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I don't understand the logic there. And yeah, sometimes it's quite slow. So here are a couple of takeaways I got from the Q&A in the chat. It's going to do very poor with very recent text or current events. Now, it's not to say that it's never going to get better, because Google's Bard is generative AI plus the power of the Google search engine. So it is possible that Bard might be good at something that GPT won't be good at. But in general, we know it's going to do questionable with current events or recent developments. What's next is, yeah, there is a huge difference between GPT 3.5 and 4. And there was a really good question that came up, which was, if I put my prompt in here, is ChatGPT going to then be better at answering my prompt and give these answers to my students? And the question or the answer is yeah, absolutely. Every time you use GPT, it's learning and it's training. But at the same time, the way that you would make GPT better by putting in your prompt for future students is nominal compared to just what's already getting better and better every single day. So I hope that makes sense in context. Now, something else came up in the chat, which was, hey, I've already been doing this. This webinar might be for somebody who's a little bit newer to ChatGPT. We're going to build as we go. So if there's anything you've done already that you feel really confident with, feel free to just share your experiences in the chat. Part of the reason why I love these workshops and webinars is it's a chance for us to just share ideas and learn from each other. So even if you're, let's say you've graduated from this level of GPT, feel free to share your experience in the chat. It's a really good use of time. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Rai to walk us through authentic assessment.
Yeah, awesome. Howdy, everyone. So for activity number 2, we're going to talk about authentic assessments and how they are really foundational for ChatGPT proofing your assignments. So we'll start with a general definition from Wikipedia, right? Authentic assessments are assessments that are really just valuable to students, more than just getting a grade. These assessments engage their interests, they skill build using contextualized tasks to test their understanding. The example provided here on the wiki is something like a simulation or a role play versus a multiple choice test. At Packback, we define authentic assessment as something that is focused on the application of that course material, aligned to course objectives and will lead to skill development, gives students that sense of autonomy and choice, that's big over here at Packback, is clear and structured, and ultimately is fun to complete as the student and fun to grade for you, the instructor. I recognize that fun is like obviously a relative term. Kind of my hope there is that students will be like intrinsically motivated to complete that work, and then in turn, what they're delivering to you will be fun to grade because you'll get to see some really successful assessments turned in. Authentic assessments, your creativity has no bounds here, but some examples for you. Replacing your summary type assignments with reflection. So some of you who have some summary assignments that you prompted ChatGPT with today might have noticed, like, it's relatively good at summarizing a text. However, the more personal an assignment is to students, the less likely they will, one, feel the need to go to ChatGPT to do their work, but also the less likely ChatGPT will be able to produce something personal for them, right? Focus on the process. So especially if you have a writing assignment, essay. I'm a middle school teacher. We did first, second, third, fourth drafts all of the time. Have that writing process be a part of the student grade. You could have a unique course experience. Generative AI cannot go on a field trip with you. So have some of those, bring in some, guest speakers, those sorts of things. And a personal favorite of mine, you could implement a reverse research paper where you provide that conclusion and argument and have students support that, build that references list, and a reverse research paper. So in activity 1, you prompted ChatGPT to complete your own writing assessment and got to see how effective, or for some of you, ineffective, the bot was at completing that task. What we've done is compiled an authentic assessment checklist to help you gauge how authentic your current assessments are, and also to provide you with some launching points for how to strengthen those assessments. I'll note here that no one assignment should, could, would check all of these boxes. Maybe over the course of a term or over the course of a school year, all of your diverse assessments combined might hit all of these checkpoints, but any one assessment, we're looking for it to hit 5 or 6 of these boxes. So we'll get into it. And this checklist will be provided to you in the companion guide after the webinar. So let's talk about it, the assessment checklist. The reason that we're looking at hitting 5 to 6 boxes, because the first 4 bolded checkpoints here are really must-haves when building authentic assignments. These are foundational for students' ability to start and complete your work. So that is, your assignment should have a purpose that aligns to course objectives, of course, and that assignment should help them build a skill that will apply beyond the assignment, hopefully beyond the classroom as well. Of course, all of these assessments should be graded in reference to performance standards or benchmarks or standardized rubric rather than on a curve, and involve transparent and demystified expectations. Additionally, you could apply any number of these things to level up your assignments and make them more authentic. So I mentioned earlier, right, require students to document the process of completing that assignment. Have drafting be part of the grade. I know a lot of you probably do this already, right? Make self-assessment and self-reflection part of the assessment. I did that all the time in my undergrad. Students could conduct their own research, gather their own data. A personal favorite of mine also is having outside audience members or whoever they're presenting to, not just be you and their classmates. I taught 7th grade, so maybe this is a little not relatable, but I always had the 8th graders come watch my 7th graders do their final presentation, just kind of like elevating that audience and who they're presenting for. Have students solve open-ended problems as if they were professionals in the field, or similarly have them simulate contexts in which professionals are tested in the workplace. So things like an interview, perhaps. Require students to create a new solution, product, or service. Of course, give students autonomy and choice in what they're writing about. And then again, have it speak to personal experiences. The more personal an assignment is, like I said, the less likely students will feel the need to go use ChatGPT, but also the less likely ChatGPT will be able to provide something of quality. So I'll keep this up, but I'll keep this back up there in a second. But quick poll here for activity number 2. Take a couple of minutes to assess the assignment that you brought today and kind of where that compares on the checklist. I'll give us about, let's say, 2 minutes for that. I'll put that on the screen. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, everyone. And I'm going to pop it over to Barbara.
Hello. All right, wonderful. I'm going to get us kicked off here with activity 3. So, as we're navigating this evolving educational and technological landscape and what we've just seen in these past 2 activities, it's important for educators to consider how to review and revise assessment practices to align with the modern learner. So we explored the significance of authentic assessment as a tool for crafting GPT-proof assignments, but we're going to switch gears now to talk about the opportunity ChatGPT presents and how incorporating GPT can serve as a valuable tool for educators. So I think we can all agree that we hope our students will rely on their own intellectual capacities before turning to AI. So just as we hope our students will do that, let us do the same thing first. So let's take a moment to reflect on what we just learned so far and generate potential solutions of our own. So here we're going to be thinking about how can we revise and improve the prompt that you brought today. Recall with the activities, specifically thinking about an aspect where GPT may have fallen short in addressing your prompt. So I saw a lot of people reflect on it couldn't give a personal example. It wasn't citing modern sources. And then also think about 1 to 2 items on that authentic assessment checklist that your assignment didn't fully meet. Take just 2 minutes to brainstorm how your prompt could be modified to either encourage the qualities lacking in that ChatGPT response, but also aligning to the authentic assessment standards. So please feel free to share your ideas in the chat. And when I see those ideas start rolling in, we can discuss and move forward. We'll take about a minute or 2 here. Wonderful. Seeing some great ideas in the chat there. Lots of adding personal reflective and process to assignments, which are wonderful. But now let's actually dive into how we can use GPT to help us with this kind of reflective process of our own. I want to go ahead and let me make sure that I'm on the right page here. Yeah. So before we dive into using GPT to assist us in reviewing our assessments, let's familiarize ourselves with some effective strategies in prompting GPT. Just like we saw Kelsey with students using, there's effective strategies we can use as well. So here are some key guidelines to keep in mind when you're prompting GPT. So 1, define the role. Tell GPT what it should be acting as, whether that is having a specific area of expertise or having a certain role. This sets the tone and ensures that AI's response aligns with the intended perspective. Also, offer relevant background information to help GPT understand the situation, the setting, or the topic at hand. The more context we provide, the better ChatGPT can tailor its response to our needs. State the task or question specifically, right? Clearly articulate the objective or the inquiry that it is supposed to address. Providing a well-defined target allows the AI to focus its response accordingly. And then lastly, these last 2, set constraints, limitations, and additional guidance. If you want it to be a certain length, say so. If you want it to be in bullet points or to be in simple terms or to have a friendly tone, you can define all those things for ChatGPT. So what you see here on the right is actually a prompt that I've crafted using these guidelines to have ChatGPT evaluate our writing assignment based on the authentic assessment checklist. So in the chat, I'm actually going to provide that link to a document for everyone. It's going to prompt you to make a copy. But this is a template titled Authentic Assessment. You're going to notice that it is crafted using the guidelines that we went over here. And we're actually going to use this to prompt GPT to help us in evaluating our writing assessment. But before we do that, let's dive into how GPT responded to this prompt. And we can look at the implications, and then we'll be able to try it on our own. So first, I want to acknowledge that GPT is invaluable. And I find it very helpful to think of it as a new colleague, right? Just as we wouldn't accept everything a colleague says to be absolute truth, or to view all their ideas as flawless, the same applies for GPT, right? It can still serve as an excellent brainstorming buddy. Even if you disagree with its results or have alternative ideas, the aim is for GPT to provide a starting point, inspire you to approach things from a fresh perspective, and make an otherwise time-consuming task more manageable and sustainable. So consider GPT as a valuable tool that can alleviate the burden of certain challenges and hopefully ignite some innovative thinking. So this is the response I got from GPT by using that template and providing a writing prompt. First, we're going to see it details which items of the authentic assessment were met and how. And in this case, specifically, meeting course objectives, strengthening skills, and setting clear expectations. Next, we can see that it has detailed for us what items were not met. So documenting process, self-reflection, including experts. And it also, because we prompted it to, it provided examples. And then last, it provides some recommendations. What are some things that we could do to improve our prompt? In this case, research real world applications and creating new solutions. And then here, I always did this with my students, and I do it with ChatGPT, which is I ask it to explain its thinking. So in a prompt, I always then have that caveat at the end, explain why these items were chosen. And that kind of can give me a good starting point to see if I even agree with the justification it's giving. With that, we're going to dive into the next activity. So if you've opened up that document, prompted you to make a copy, what you're going to do is copy and paste your writing prompt in that designated area. So down here, we can see to add your writing prompt, and then copy and paste your writing prompt along with the template. And you can go ahead and put that into GPT and see what it says. Review its responses, share any of your reactions in the chat, and then be ready to reflect in a poll in a minute. So we're going to take 3 to 5 minutes for this. I will post that document one more time. It's in the chat. All right, hopefully we've all at least been able to try that out once. I'm seeing some reactions come into the chat here. Let's go ahead and take a quick poll as you're getting your response from GPT. Will you take any of the suggestions GPT provided? Why or why not?
The poll is up, right? Were you able to launch it?
I don't see it.
Okay, let me see. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Okay, now it's launched. I forgot to stop sharing the last poll. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. So as folks are still answering that prompt, let's go ahead and think about also some other applications for this. So ChatGPT offers capabilities way beyond what we just did here and extends to various areas of teaching. When ChatGPT was initially introduced, I couldn't help but think of all the ways I would have used it, especially as a special education teacher, to think of engaging learning activities and also how to help me think of ways to differentiate my assignments and instruction. So here are a few ways we can use AI to help enhance our teaching practices. So some of the ones that I've laid out here are brainstorming innovative learning activities, designing assessments, at least giving us a jumping off point for them, exploring differentiation techniques, and even troubleshooting instructional challenges that we face in the classroom. I've actually loaded some of these examples up in ChatGPT to see what the response was. And you'll have access to some of the prompts that I used or templates to them following the webinar. So coming in first to learning activities, by providing a prompt, again, with some of those best practices I shared earlier, defining the role that ChatGPT is playing, and then really providing as much context and constraints as I can. In this example, I'm looking for just creative lesson ideas, and I've provided the grade level, the course, and the learning objectives. And ChatGPT was able to provide some interesting ideas. Again, these likely aren't things that I'm going to copy and paste and take as gold, right? But it is, again, that brainstorming buddy. This might give me a starting point to try to present my curriculum in a different way. So, some of these examples were historical narrative project, primary source analysis workshop, right? Again, just that starting off point to kind of freshen things up in how we're teaching. Another example of how we can use ChatGPT is in the idea of an assessment creator. So again, a prompt where we're telling ChatGPT what we would like it to act as, and we're giving it as much context and constraints as we can. And then here I wanted 10 multiple choice questions and 2 essay prompts, and ChatGPT was able to, again, provide this for me. Am I going to take this as truth? No, I'm going to take this and I want to make sure, obviously, I'm fact checking it. I'm hitting the targets I want, but it can give that starting off point for us. And another one, this one, again, I said is one that I was most excited about. This is another kind of idea of reviewing and reflecting upon our teaching strategies and thinking of ways that we can improve them. And so in this example, I'm actually prompting ChatGPT to look at a lesson plan and evaluate it on if I am differentiating for learners of differing abilities, if I'm including the different learning modalities. And here ChatGPT was able to, so I provided this prompt, provided my lesson plan, and then it was able to evaluate it. Well, what did my lesson do well? It is involving critical thinking and writing. And, but that also is one of its deficits, is that it's primarily focused on reading and writing and really not targeting any of the other learning styles. And then it gives some suggestions on how I can improve that lesson by incorporating some of these, whether it is, having audio clips instead of just written word, other ideas to help us modify instruction. And another quick way that we can use ChatGPT, again, this prompt will be in the handout, is as giving it a prompt as an expert educator, how would you help in a certain challenge? So for this example, I gave the challenge of, I have a student who's doing exceptionally well in written work, but doesn't participate in discussions. And here are some ideas of how I can maybe motivate that student or modify my assessment to make sure that student is able to use their voice and demonstrate their knowledge in a way that is accessible to them. So those are just some ideas. And again, not all of these are going to be truth and things you can just take and run with, but it is a way to kind of get those wheels turning and hopefully assist in making the idea of reviewing and reflecting upon our assignments and teaching strategies a little less daunting, and hopefully fun and engaging. But here I would love to hear from you. Are there ways you're already using ChatGPT to help with your workload, or ideas that you have now of that you could use ChatGPT for in the future? Wonderful ideas in the chat so far. Yeah, and having students use it as a brainstorming tool as well is fantastic. All right. We'll keep sharing those ideas if you have them in the chat. I also want to share with you all, I'm going to share one other slide here. So if we can take a look at a tool, our product and engineering team actually came up with some ideas as well to help tools for teachers. And so this is Teach with GPT. This is a free tool available for everybody that has 4 built-in tools that you can use. So there is Check GPT, which is going to check if a text is likely made by AI. There is the Course to Career Connector, where you can input your course and the student can input their career goals, and it will actually kind of find ways that your course material is relevant to the student's goals and can be useful to them. There is the Fact Check AI assignment generator, which will actually spin up an essay with factual errors that the student can then go ahead and practice those fact checking, researching, and editing skills by finding those errors. And the Teach Open-Ended Questions tool, which will help students take their close-ended questions and find ways to make them open-ended for more engaging discussion. So I will put the link to this tool in the chat as well. Feel free to share that widely and take a look at all of these tools. And with that, I'll pass it to Kelsey.
Thank you so much. I don't know if everyone's been keeping up with the chat and the Q&A, but I think this has been a really great representation of how wide the spectrum is. Many of us are saying, I'm mortified. Many of us are saying, I've been using AI in every single assignment because why fight it? Some folks are saying GPT is failing my assessment. Some folks are saying it's passing. It's such a wide spectrum. And the solution for you might not be to embrace it today or tomorrow in your classroom, but the more that you learn about it, the more you demystify it and you understand how to navigate it. And I want to just end with this one piece of advice from a human being who only studied STEM in college and was terrified of writing for most of my life. I love writing today. I did not love writing 10 years ago. Writing is a form of art for me. It's a form of therapy. It is something that I've learned to love on my own, because at no point in my education experience, because I studied STEM, did anybody ask me to just write whatever I wanted to for 5 minutes, or journal about my day, or write one thing I was grateful for. So if you're nervous about GPT, or you feel like we've just swallowed all of the pills in the matrix, that's totally fine. That's valid. But the solution can't be to just steer away from writing, because we have to remember that a lot of people in this universe love writing and rely on it. And the more that we can help our students learn why they may also love writing and the benefits of learning how to write and communicate with their peers, the better off we're going to be as educators, but then also they're going to be better at using GPT if they understand the importance of writing and they learn how to use both and weave it in there. So if you're a writing instructor, I guess my call to action to you is no pressure, but just teach your students to love writing. And if you're not a writing instructor, kind of think, how can I incorporate writing in my curriculum in a way that might actually, embrace a few more Kelseys in the universe. So I want to just thank the panelists today, Rye, Barbara, Cynthia, for joining. Thank you everyone for coming to this workshop. Like I said, in less than 48 hours, you'll have the recording, you'll have the guide. If there are any last minute questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I can hang around for probably another 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll wrap up here. But thank you so much. If you got to hop off, I totally understand, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Awesome. Thank you. Danielle just asked a great question. What would have been needed to love writing sooner? I think what I used to do, I used to teach chemistry and physics. So as a STEM teacher, I would often ask my students just in the first few minutes of every class period to write something down that they were confused about, or just like, hey, just write down what you think the definition of a proton is, or a neutron. Maybe even draw a little picture. So just like kind of give them these small little at-bats with writing, and I'd play music in the background. And it's really small. It's like pretty insignificant. It might not even work in higher education, depending on what you're doing. But I think these small little at-bats that are ungraded, they're safe, they kind of like warm the brain up. I think maybe that would have helped me sooner with writing, because I was only writing lab reports, and there's not much fun about lab reports. No offense. I studied chemistry, okay? It can get pretty dry. Yes, and then George asked a great question. Absolutely feel free to share recording, the guide with literally anybody in the universe. Put it on Twitter, put it on your LinkedIn. We're from Packback, and if you're curious about the Packback software, reach out to us. But ultimately, we're here to make students' experiences magical. So the more we share our idealistic views, the better. Wonderful. Well, have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you so much, panelists. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And then recordings will be coming your way soon. Bye, folks.